Exciting. I mean, it's an exciting offseason for the Bengals. They've announced a Ring of Honor. They've got some new jerseys coming up. They've got the number 5 overall pick. So there's a lot of excitement. And we've been pretty excited over the last couple of weeks on this show because we've had Richmond Webb on the program. We've had Mike Daniels on the program. We've been pretty psyched and pretty blessed to have those guys on our show. John, I know that you I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to tell us about Symbol, our most recent partnership that we have developed on the program?
You have read my mind, Anthony. Yes, that's right. Symbol, our sponsor, is the stock market for sports that allows you to trade sports teams just like stocks. And if it sounds that easy, it is that easy. Everyone, you know what teams are good and what teams are bad. Everyone has so much information about what's going on in the sports world. What better way to utilize that knowledge than to invest in a stock market that allows you to profit off of team success and their failures? Symbol gives you a way to earn money off of that knowledge without the high fees and the high losses of gambling. It's not gambling, it's investing. And that's a very important description to make. You can use your sports knowledge to buy low, sell high, and earn cash payouts when your teams win. It's really that simple. And all you have to do is visit www.symbol.app. That's www.simbull.app, or you can visit the link in our description, symbol.app/OPI. And that description is very important because when you click on that link, you can create a free account and use the promo code OBI for a $10 deposit bonus. Again, the draft is coming up in 2 weeks. Bengals are going to take player X, make that team better, increase the stock price for the Sim Bengals, so you better invest before that happens. Again, that's www.symbol.app, www.simbull.app/OBI. Use the promo code OBI for a $10 deposit bonus when you sign up.
Well, let's transition then into this. This segues nicely into our player profile. We're just going to spend a couple minutes on this, and we'll drop the mic and get out of here. But we talked about a couple of small school offensive linemen. John and I are going to tag team this one. It's a kind of a smaller school defensive lineman, one that's getting a lot of run, not only on Twitter, but amongst draft gurus and all kinds of different circles. Milton Williams out of Louisiana Tech, a really interesting player, a guy who kind of had early day 3 designations to him early in the draft process, tested extremely well. And now all of a sudden I saw Lance Zierlein on an NFL.com player profile of him, have him potentially as high as round 2. A lot of people think he's going to be called late on night 2 in round 3. So let's get to some of the things that I noticed. I know you've got some notes on him as well, John, but I like sharing this account because this is someone that is very popular this time of year. Kentley Platt at MathBomb on Twitter. Here is the relative athletics score for Milton Williams. He does have him, by the way, if you look at the size, he does have him down as a defensive end, and we can talk more about that as well. But he has him down as a defensive end, 6'3", 284, 34 reps on the bench. And then, of course, you look at the explosion grade, a 38.5-inch vertical, a 10-foot broad jump there. And then you see the composite speed grade, great. And you look at a 4.67 40-yard dash, the splits there, and then the agility grade, the shuttle, and a sub 7-second 3-cone. All of these say, according to Kentley Platt's metrics, this ranked 8th out of a possible 1,361 defensive ends from 1987 to 2021. So that gives you a little bit of a context, and that plays into what we were talking about in terms of the player who – these small school players that have high-end athleticism, and their profile is – this guy's profile is off the charts here, just a small I guess if you want to – this is pretty funny here. This is workout warrior status here, but you look here, he's I wish I could say I've done this. 500 pounds on the bench, John, just puts it up like nobody's business there. And again, I think 34 reps on the bench for him anyway. So strong kid. Now, does it always translate to the tape? Yes and no. I see some inconsistencies. I see some things that need to be worked up, but there's basically over the past 2 seasons a guy who has moved along the defensive line in a number of different spots. Sometimes has kind of played edge, I think, potentially, and you correct me if I'm wrong here. Maybe at MathBomb has him as a defensive end, potentially as a, maybe that is where some teams project him, whether they play a 4-3-3-4, but that's dependent upon the scheme. But he played a couple of different spots in there on the defensive line for Louisiana Tech, was pretty productive, had 10 sacks over the past 2 seasons. I think he had 19 tackles for loss or something. I have to look that up, but 4.5 and 5.5 sacks the past 2 seasons. He was a redshirt junior. I'm going to share a couple of little clips here that I saw, and then I did watch some other film outside of just these little clips, but these things could provide some context here. This is a piece of film that is through Brandon Thorne, but Jack Branchall does some draft stuff for Green Bay Packers, and you see the 20.9% pass rush win rate leads all interior defenders in the 2021 draft class. So you can kind of see him. He's spotlighted here, gets in there. I think that's against BYU there, against Wilson and whatnot, but a couple of nice plays there. And then you see this is Ben Fennel, another popular guy on Twitter, a draft guy there. Let me pull this up for you. So you see here, he gets into the backfield. That is against the run. That's one of the areas I thought there was maybe a little bit of some inconsistency. There was one game I watched, I think it was against Georgia Southern. We had a couple plays where he was having some trouble being in the right place. But, the plays that he does make, they usually really, really pop off, in terms of a tackle for loss, a sack. I mean, they really pop off the tape in terms of, showing his athleticism and whatnot. And we would be remiss if we did not show a clip provided by our good friend Joe Goodberry. We love this guy, and he has been also a guy who has been all over the Milton Williams bandwagon. You see here a little grainy footage here, but he points him out. You can see him. He gets nice leverage off of the guard there. And then there's another play. I think this is the following play here. Splits him, gets in there, and forces a bad throw. So some of the other things I saw outside of just these little clips, like I said, I saw some clips against Georgia Southern that I didn't really like. There was one specific drive where a couple plays, it seemed in a row that he seemed to be kind of pushed out of the way and or moved, and he didn't show that strength. But overall, a guy I think is pretty exciting and should be in the conversation, I think, at a top around 3 for the Bengals.
The Bengals have a unique opportunity in an offseason when they watched AJ Green leave and they released Gino Atkins. They have the opportunity to replace both in one draft, which is very rare because they were the faces of the franchise, more or less. They can replace AJ Green with Jamar Chase, which is what we expect them to do in the first round. And it's been reported since like Milton's pro day back in March that if he's there with the 69th pick, that the Bengals would be very, very much interested in taking him at the top of the 3rd round. I think Malik Wright on the Locked On Bengals podcast the other day mentioned that is a player that they're expected to target at that pick. And it makes all the sense in the world because for years they've been interested in finding the next Gino Atkins, but no one really knows what the next Gino Atkins looks like. So we have to look at what actually matters. Coming out of college, the Gino Atkins out of Georgia was incredibly productive in that Georgia defense. Maybe not for the volume stats, but just within that Georgia defense, he was productive in all 3 areas of solo tackles, tackles for loss, sacks. He was incredibly athletic for his size, and he was only 6'1", 290, which is ultimately why he fell down to the 4th round. But he was incredibly athletic, as we all know. He ran like a 4.7 40 at that size, but teams were just worried he was like undersized. And he was one of the main proponents of why that narrative is BS and why you're seeing guys like Aaron Donald and others and quote unquote undersized defensive tackles get drafted high. Milton Williams is exactly the type of player that his ceiling is Gino Atkins, right? And that's not saying it lightly. That's not saying that he is the next Gino Atkins. But if you're looking for the next Gino Atkins, he looks like this. He's extremely athletic. He's extremely productive, and he shows the flashes on tape. Defensive tackle is an incredibly hard position to evaluate because it's not always consistent, but you just want to see that explosion pop off. You want to see those flashes. It's not always going to be pretty, and I think that's why Williams isn't this bona fide, first round lock or guy who's projected to go in the high second round. There are issues with, he doesn't always play with great leverage and he doesn't always find the ball, and that's understandable. That's fine. That's just those are normal knocks. But the good things, the positives, that is what creates this Gino Atkins like ceiling, and it makes all the sense in the world. In the first season without Gino Atkins, they're actually going to find someone that can become that, and it's in the perfect situation too because they have Ogunjobi, they have our good friend Mike Daniels to play in front of him to keep that rotation going. They can mentor him for a year, and then next year, maybe they re-sign Ogunjobi to another short-term deal. They can implement Williams more in the rotation at that 3 technique spot. I know he's listed as a defensive end. That's mainly because of Louisiana Tech's scheme that they ran. They did ran more of an odd front scheme, which is why he's listed as a defensive end. That's more of like a 5-tech, 4-eye type of position, so he wasn't always lining up in the B gap. But when he was lining up in the B gap, that is where you project him to be. That is where he played his best. And again, it wasn't always perfect, but the flashes are there. The production, the athleticism is there. If he's there at the top of the 3rd round, I honestly do expect the Bengals to take him, which is why I made that prediction. Like, the Bengals are going to dip into the small school pool again early in the draft. And it's because I'm pretty confident that they're going to be really, really, really interested in him.
Yeah, and I there could be, I kind of just hinted at it because I didn't want to give away that we were going to be talking about this player right away. But there's a distinct possibility that they go with one of those small school offensive linemen round 2, and then they go right back to the small school well again in round 3 and go after Milton Williams. I know a lot of the names I'm going to mention were under Marvin Lewis in his watch with the Bengals, but round 3 and round 4 is kind of the bread and butter as to where this team likes to draft defensive tackles. You can go back to Andrew Billings. You can go back to Pat Sims. You can go back to Damata Pico. You can go back to Gino Atkins. These are round 3, round 4 guys. And they, Devin Still was round 2. Brandon Thompson was round 3. I mean, they like those round 3, round 4 defensive tackles. They like to try and get value, and they like to try and get some trying to mine that talent here. Here's another guy that they drafted. I think he was round 4, if I remember correctly. This is one and a little bit different player and build and whatnot, but this kind of speaks to the Bengals coveting. And this is on actual Kentley Platt's website, the relativeathleticscores.com, not necessarily his Twitter profile, but here is Renell Wren. And you see here the relative athletic score of 9.74, and you see the composite grades here of everything here. And you see obviously quite a bit bigger at 315 pounds, 6'4", what he measured in at. And he did have him down as a defensive tackle, but the profile and the coveting of athleticism and hoping to mold that clay out of an interior defensive lineman, I think kind of rings true here. And this is a guy that they probably will covet to do the same.
And the Bengals are smart to be investing in athletes at that position because the majority of successful defensive tackles, they are supreme athletes. If they're not like the elites of like the Renell Wrens of the world with the 9.5 plus RS scores, they're definitely above average. I think Ogunjobi fits along that bill as well. DJ Ritter tested pretty athletic for his size. Like it's smart to invest in athletes. And I think it's an interesting topic with Wren as well. Now that you bring him up, like if they add Williams to this defensive tackle rotation, that's Ogunjobi, Daniels, Williams, DJ Reader. Like you have to think like they're keeping no more than Tupou as well, who I think restructured his deal to make him a little bit more cheaper for this year. So it kind of think like Wren is almost like playing for his job if they add another defensive tackle, which we expect them to do.
Yeah, and it also this is kind of something I was potentially thinking about asking Mike Daniels about, but the approach by Lou Anarumo in terms of generating pressure this year, they went after Carl Lawson. They also brought in Trey Hendrickson. I don't know that it was ever in their plans necessarily to get both of those guys in unless it really fit in financially, which probably didn't seem feasible given what they've been doing. But, it seems as if they're like, hey, yeah, we'll add an edge guy and we lose an edge guy. We're not going to bring in a ton of edge players. It's more generating pressure, generating getting guys that can move around a little bit on the interior of the defensive line and generating pressure that way. And so this would be kind of a creative way in looking at Milton Williams' film, and you bring in a Larry Ogunjobi, you have a Mike Daniels. Maybe it's just a different way of generating pressure than rather than just the traditional guys off the edge. I don't know. That was just something that kind of popped in my head when I was watching some stuff on this kid.
Yeah. On that note, even if they do add Williams, we can expect them to add an edge rusher too, right?
In the draft class. Yeah.
As well.
So where do you think they would do that? Do you think that would be maybe round 2, or do you think that's day 3?
I don't know. Like, I feel like they're definitely going to be looking at it beyond round 1. Like, if there's just, I believe we mocked Jalen Phillips to them back in like January, whatever. Mm-hmm. I feel like if he's there, he would be on the short list. Like the Pittsburgh guys, even though they didn't test well, I feel like they still would be interested in him. Taron Jackson, if we're going to keep with the small school stuff, he was heavily worked out by, I believe it was Al Golden. I don't know that for sure, but at Coastal Carolina's pro day, they had a Bengals personnel member run him through a workout, and I think there's definite interest there, maybe in like the round 5 range. So like as the longer the draft goes, and they don't draft an edge rusher, like that next pick, you can almost expect it to be. Like, I feel like that's going to be a pretty high priority behind adding like the second offensive lineman or a Milton Williams type of defensive tackle.
Well, that's our free agency profile this week. Milton Williams, a guy who's getting a lot of run and probably will not be available past round 3. I would expect night 2 his name to be called, and the potential of the Bengals grabbing him in round 3 is pretty high based on not only just people with knowledge of what the team is looking at and how their draft board is shaking out, but also just what this kid's profile is and the need and the want. I mean, the Bengals they've gone after a number of different interior defensive linemen. Even after signing Larry Ogunjobi, they went off after Sheldon Rankins, if you remember. So they've been trying to bolster that interior of the defensive line, and they've done quite a bit of it over the past 2 off seasons. They're probably going to continue doing it in the draft going forward.